Yes, our exhortation. Um, I re- I remember exactly when I realized the greatest gift my parents gave me, and that's when I was in college, a freshman, and I saw for the first time. So, right, I graduated in the late '70s. Uh, the Mary Tyler Morrison effect was starting to drift, but I didn't grow up around divorce. I didn't. I only had one friend from a divorce, and the rest were not. But when I went to college for the first time, I saw that floor of those other young women, and I thanked my parents when I got home. That's the greatest gift.
Yeah.
And um, my parents deciding to put the children first and our education first, even though my father was a Catholic, he always very much supported my mother in that regard. Well, even when that meant, and so when I was in my high school, petty, very, very, very petty mind. I saw my friends, they had fancy boats or they had fancy cars, they had this better thing, that better thing. And when I was in my real petty mind, more petty mind, I thought those were the gifts.
Yeah.
And, oh, my friend, they're not. They're not. So we asked forgiveness. I asked for their forgiveness as well. And I thanked them throughout the years. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. I was able to have at least enough sense to do that. But that is that's for all. We can all, if we're called to marriage, we can do these sorts of things, right? Um,
And I think it's kind of important. Like one of the things that you were just saying there, right? There's this tightrope balance that we're always walking, right? The marriage precedes the children, but the children are the purpose of the marriage, right? So the couple has to love one another because the children require that stability to know that they came from love, right? It's so important. So we as a married in our union, it's imperative that we keep the first thing first, which is keep the union strong so that the children will be strong. And you saw that yourself. I saw that myself too. Many of my friends in childhood also from non-divorced homes. I mean, I don't think in my I it was a scandal. I mean, it was so shocking to hear that someone's parents was getting divorced. And what I found was like, you know, it was just it was you're right. It was a moment where you just were so thankful that at a time when divorce was so easy, everybody was just kind of letting the house fold, that certain people honored that commitment to the sacrament,
okay.
even despite hardships. I have a very, very dear friend of mine, who this couple, they weathered some pretty horrific storms from probably year 13 through year 25 of their marriage. It was very, very challenging. But by a special gift of that commitment to their unity, their children get to come and see, grandma and grandpa at the same house for Christmas. And that's not insignificant. It's a stabilizing influence on those adult children, even though the times were hard for those 10 or 15 years. It was very challenging, even for the children. But hindsight is going to heal those wounds way faster than if they threw in the towel.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Um, Brad Wilcox takes this argument to the Atlantic. He brings it straight into where the elites like to play, and he says,
yeah.
"Hey, you talk these things, which leads to the destruction of those who don't quite have the same uh, uh, safety nets that you guys have, and you need to tell the truth. You need to tell how your success really does come from stable and satisfying marriages."
Hmm.
He looks at something interesting. he brings in California, where it's actually, so we all have images of California, or at least I assume we all do, but their family structures as a whole is pretty solid. And the reason for that is because of the Asian immigration.
Oh,
And that underpins California society in general from suffering the effects
bad
of it.
consequences, right? Of
Yes, yes.
yeah.
So I put some YouTube video if you want there. First Things had an article here on the role of sex within marriage and its sacredness. But we want to be the first here to encourage that if you're that if you suffered under a less than ideal family situation, you're not doomed. One, but two, the compassionate thing isn't to say that that wasn't, it didn't matter. It did matter. Now let's try and find ways of healing that and not perpetuating it if you're called to marriage, in the next generation. That's the hope here.
Right. Yeah. And just, to be cognizant of the fact that two lives working together for a common goal is always going to be better than one person striving for the same thing. The two-man boat is always going to beat the one-person boat. It's just God has made us to have myriad complementary talents. And there's a reason for that, because there is a goodness in the unity of a husband and wife coming together, drawing on each other's strengths and upholding each other in their weaknesses. This is, it's an essential element to, like I had said before, living that integrated life. It matters how you engage with people of the opposite sex. And, it is there isn't, if you were to sit down with 50 couples who are in happy, beautiful marriages, you will hear the same thing over and over again. I am where I am because I married such a wonderful person, right? It's always going to be, the limelight is always going to be cast by the spouse on the other for the goodness of the marriage. And there's a real beauty in that, because therein lies that selfless donation. So, and particularly for women, young women, I just wish that they understood the value of time more. That they really understood that if you have a vocation to marriage, it's time to get about it. You don't have, God did not make you in the same way that He made man. He really did make it so that you could be a young bride, so that you could be fruitful and that you could multiply. The older that you get, and the harder that becomes. And the culture has been very unjust to young women, telling them that they should front load everything to the detriment of beginning a family. That's a real detriment to them, and it's a real injustice. A lot of sadness, I think, is spent on women who thought that they could just get everything lined up before they had children, only to find out when they're 30, 35 years old that they can't.
That's part of the flying solo myth. He
Right, it
covers
is.
that. That's
Right.
exactly what happens, and a lot of women suffer a lot of sorrow because of that. It's a derivation from that. That is correct. All right, my friends, we are so glad you joined us. Until the next time, Fides and Ratio.